massive identity politics that exists today. And I think what you referred to as unintended consequences of intervention, I believe, are actually intrinsic features of intervention. The legacy of ethnic violence, the legacy of sectarian politics that exists at sites of intervention for hundreds of years afterwards are innumerable, or the instances of that are innumerable. And the fact that the discourses that inform and underwrite the way in which these interventions are carried out themselves transpose communal identities and are productive in their form is something that has to be remembered, you know. So I think when you speak about the need for the possibility of secondary intervention, the relationship between the initial intervention and the mess of identity politics afterwards it's inseparable, you know.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, and I've talked about it and written about it, but I have to say that I do reject the narrative that sectarianism is the result of intervention and military occupation. I mean, in some ways it actually does inadvertently take agency away from Iraqis. So I would complicate the picture. I mean, I'm with you in principle, but I would sort of complicate it a bit and to say that sectarianism existed in Iraq prior to 2003. I mean, Saddam Hussein played divide and conquer. I mean, I experienced it in my own family. People have written about it. Sectarianism and, of course, also Kurdish Arab. We don't need the Americans or the British to to create that tension. I mean, the atrocities against the Kurds did that job. Atrocities of Saddam Hussein by deporting Shia in the 70s and 80s, the crackdown on Shia after 1991. So, I mean, there was certainly sectarianism before, but what the invasion and occupation did, it in the first instance institutionalized sectarianism. So when the Iraqi Governing Council was appointed, it wasn't based on sort of political party programs, but it was all based on these very simplistic sectarian and communal divisions. And then, of course, the very politics of initially the Shia being the good guys because they were seen to have support. Well, they supported at least some of the politicians, the Shia Islamist politicians who supported the invasion. So they were the good guys who turning a blind eye when the Shia militia were actually cracking down on Sunnis. But I mean, I personally hold Iraqi opposition politicians as responsible, as American and British. I mean, the level actually of sectarianism that I've experienced amongst the Iraqi diaspora in what's called Arab Detroit was horrendous. And there's actually something about identity politics in the US, I think, that kind of fosters that sectarianism, but also the Iraqi opposition in London. And people, when you look at the Iraqi government, since 2003, most of the people in key positions where people had been living outside for 20, 30 years and very much brought in this sectarian agenda. And of course now it's unfortunately very deep-seated. So I agree with you, but I would say it's not just all coming from outside.